What's the strangest unsolved mystery? What happened to Ireland's most beloved racehorse Sugar? It's widely believed the IRA kidnapped him for ransom and ended up shooting him to death as he got too much to deal with. However, even long after ending their campaign, the IRA has been admitting to the kidnappings and killings of several people, especially in relation to the disappeared, but haven't mentioned Sugar once. Surely they would come out and claimed responsibility by now if they were behind it. There's a star called Przybylski's star that's full of plutonium, an element that should not exist anymore in nature as it would have all decayed into other element. Even if you assume aliens, where did they get so much plutonium? And why would they use it to change the composition of an entire star? Nothing makes sense about it. The call of the void. What's that about? It's eerie as hell. I've experienced that a lot. This one always gets me. A group of friends and I were urban exploring up in New York State. We went to this huge building. I think it was called Danceville Point. It was an old hospital that was built into a hillside. I remember being up on the 3rd or 4th floor standing on the edge of where a balcony once was. All of a sudden I got this intense warm lovely feeling. Everything in my body told me to jump. The beautiful purple night skies were stretched before me and the black tree line looked so inviting. I took a step forward and then threw myself backwards on the ground. I remember crawling away just horrified. I wasn't suicidal, nor did I have any major mental health issues, but something about seeing that wide open space just made my brain scream back jump. It was so freaky that my body wanted to go over the edge. I'll never forget that euphoric feeling followed by vomit-inducing horror of what I almost did. The 169th victim of the Oklahoma City bombing. They found an additional leg in the rubble. DNA tests showed it belonged to another victim who had already been buried, but with the wrong leg. The wrong leg had already been embalmed, so they could not get DNA at the time. So who did this leg belong to? All other legs had been accounted for in other victims. They found no other body parts, and nobody else had been reported missing. It was only until 2015 they could get DNA from the leg, but it's still classified as a John Doe. A few conspiracy theories had pop up, like maybe a second bomber that got caught in the blast, but it's still unknown. I remember seeing a video about a woman that, after getting divorced, started getting stalked and assaulted in her own house. Every time police would arrive, no one more than her was at the scene. Sometimes she would appear with bruises. Once she appeared with a screwdriver through her hand. This happened so many times that police started ignoring her calls after the investigation on her husband and on the case left no suspects. 3 months later she disappeared, just to reappear next to a highway in the middle of the desert, miles away from her house, with her hands tied, dead. Autopsy later confirmed she was beaten to death. Creepiest stuff I know. Why poor people vote Republican? Because they are voting based on cultural issues, not economic issues. That's why Republicans focus on stuff like anti-LGBTQ issues, abortion, and prayer in schools. Those issues trigger these people and get them to vote against their economic interests. Asha degree lived in my town in 2000. She walked out of her home willingly at age 9 in the middle of the night on Valentine's Day during a massive storm. She was sighted multiple times walking down an extremely rural and desolate highway by herself in the pouring rain, and then was never seen again. Her book bag was discovered miles away, buried in a trash bag a year later. How was a 9-year-old convinced to leave her home alone in the middle of the night, in a storm, to walk down a deserted highway? How has there been no substantive leads at all since 2001? I'm not American, but what kept me most interested about America is Area 51. I don't know why the hell it is so overrated in aliens and tech topics. It is even included in many video games as Easter eggs. Featured in many movie franchises, but nobody answered deep to its mysteries. You may say 2-3 things about it, but it's only the surface level. I guess not even the residents of US will ever know what's beneath it actually is. The Bronze Age collapse. See, people always gets me down a rabbit hole. The Bronze Age collapse always gets me down a rabbit hole of getting mad at Redditors for refusing to listen to reason. The Sea Peoples did not exist in the form in which they are commonly described. They were not mysterious. They had documented names and we have a good idea of who all those names refer to. Every shred of evidence we have indicates that the Sea Peoples were simply the various civilizations of the Eastern Mediterranean who were fleeing the Bronze Age collapse. They didn't cause it. They were victims of it. In some cases they were invaders, sure, but in many cases they were simply refugees who peacefully relocated to other regions. The Bronze Age collapse is a deeply fascinating period of history of terms of understanding how, even thousands of years ago, regions can be so deeply interconnected as to almost completely collapse as a result of various natural and man-made disasters. There are a lot of important lessons we can learn as residents of a much more interconnected culture, and instead we just obsess over this lie about mysterious armies sailing in out of nowhere and then vanishing, which is not actually a thing that happened. Also, the Sea Peoples were not mysterious at the time. We know about them primarily from Egyptian reliefs depicting Ramesses III's victory over them, and the context of these reliefs is check out our mighty victory over these enemies we know by name. Not holy sh, where did these mysterious armies come from? The mystery of the Sea Peoples is a modern problem caused by a lack of written records from that era and the fact that most of the Egyptian names don't have a clear modern corollary. For example, most historians believe the Sea People tribe the Egyptians referred to as the Palisade were simply the Philistines. But we don't know that to be the case for certain and likely never will. The location of Heinrich Müller, the final Gestapo chief. He was last seen in Berlin, roughly 3 days before it fell. At the time, he claimed to be fully aware of what the Russians did to POWs, and that he had no intention of being taken prisoner. He most likely had access to foreign documents as the Gestapo leader, and knew how to duplicate them. He was sought after by the CIA and the KGB, but nothing of him has ever been discovered. I heard this one many years ago, and couldn't find anything at the time to refute it. Maybe it's been solved, or disproven since. The story about the bullied boy, who was locked in his bedroom closet by his sibling, and neighborhood kids, while their parents were out. He had always been creeped out by the closet, claiming there was a monster inside, so the kids thought it would be funny to force him inside, and block his exit. They laughed at his terrified screams, and begging to be let out. Then, there was a monstrous sound that clearly wasn't being made by the boy, and after that the closet went silent. When they opened the door, the boy was gone. Vanished. The frantic parents searched high and low. Police were called. The community searched, but the boy was never found. The wow signal. Astronomers have speculated for years that if intelligent alien life were real, they would have similar or better understandings of physical sciences as we do. One thing that is universal in chemistry and physical sciences is frequencies emitted by certain atomic element. Therefore, intelligent alien life would most likely have an understanding of these frequencies as we do. So, if intelligent life wanted to communicate in a way which was universal between planets, that is, not a special language or numeric system, then emitting a signal at a certain frequency would be an excellent way of doing that, as hydrogen is the building block of all other elements due to its simplicity and integral nature. Astronomers speculate that if intelligent life wanted to communicate through frequencies, they would do so in the hydrogen frequency. In the 70s, radio telescopes in the US were pointed up towards the sky collecting any radio data that came in. Most of the data collected are seemingly nothing, just random radio noise. However, in the early morning of August 15, 1977, one of these radio telescope centers began to get a ton of data, and it was all at or near the frequency of hydrogen, and the signal was strong and fairly consistent, meaning that it would be incredibly unlikely it was random radio noise or passing radiation. Technicians monitoring the data were dumbfounded by the signal and had no explanation for why it was coming or how it was so consistent. So, they just wrote wow on the datasheet. We still don't know how such a powerful signal could have even penetrated our atmosphere and remained consistently transmitted for as long as it did. Some people believe it could have been military testing nearby. But, again, it would be incredibly unlikely such a consistent message could be transmitted through simple interference. Plus, no military testing was reported in the surrounding area. The same or similar data has not been reported since, leading many to believe that the signal could have been an SOS signal from a dying planet, or just a passing coincidence that we may never see again?